Aziz was still half asleep when his phone began vibrating non-stop on the bedside table. At first he ignored it, assuming it was his editor asking for another early report. But when the fifth call came in, followed by a flood of messages, he reached for the phone with a sigh, only for his breath to vanish the moment he read the notifications. Her name. The same name repeated in every headline. The same name that shaped his life. He sat up so fast that the blanket tangled around his legs. His heart hammered painfully as he opened the first article. A heavy loss for Uzbekistan, beloved public figure passes away in Madinah, the words blurred as he read them. It felt unreal, like a mistake, a cruel, impossible rumor. He refreshed the page multiple times, hoping it would disappear, hoping someone would issue a correction. But the truth stayed. Aziz staggered to his feet, pacing the room, running his fingers through his hair. Memories rushed through him, her voice advising him during his first interview, the way she smiled kindly even when tired, the encouraging words she always found for anyone who needed them. The sun had barely risen, but outside his window he already saw neighbors gathered on the streets, their faces pale with shock. Even the city seemed quieter, as if holding its breath. Aziz grabbed his jacket, not even sure where he was going. Maybe to the newsroom, maybe to her home, maybe nowhere, just away from the suffocating silence of the apartment. As he stepped outside, he noticed people crying openly, strangers consoling each other, shopkeepers lowering their shutters out of respect. It was as if the entire country had fallen into mourning overnight. His phone rang again. This time it was Saida, her voice trembling, barely recognizable. "Aziz, please come. There's something she left for you. Something she said only you would understand." Her words chilled him more than the cold morning air. Without another thought, he ran toward the taxi stand, unaware that this moment, this single phone call, would pull him into the deepest mystery of his life. Aziz arrived at the airport still breathless from the rush, his mind spinning with unanswered questions. He hadn't packed properly, just tossed a few essentials into his backpack and left his apartment as if fleeing a fire. The taxi ride was a blur, and now, standing among crowds of travelers, he felt oddly detached, as if watching himself from a distance. Security lines moved slowly, each minute stretching painfully. His fingers kept tightening around his passport, his chest rising and falling with restless urgency. Saida's trembling voice echoed in his ears. "There's something she left for you." What could it be? Why him? Why only him? As he boarded the plane, his hands shook, not from fear of flying, but from the weight of not knowing what awaited him in Madinah. The moment he buckled his seatbelt, exhaustion washed over him. Memories of her flooded his thoughts, the interviews he'd done under her guidance, the way she always insisted on truth, fairness, dignity. She had been more than a mentor, she was a moral compass for the entire nation. But the notebook Saida mentioned, that was new. She had never shared her private reflections with anyone. Not even close friends. Halfway through the flight, Aziz woke from a restless half-sleep to find an elderly Uzbek man beside him whispering prayers. Tears streamed down the man's face. When he noticed Aziz watching, he wiped them quickly and forced a faint smile. "She helped my family once," the man said quietly. "Long time ago. We never forgot." His voice cracked. "May God grant her paradise." Aziz nodded silently, swallowing hard. It seemed everywhere he went, someone had a story about her kindness. The loss felt collective, like the country had lost a part of its soul. When the plane landed in Madinah, the warm air wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. The call to prayer echoed in the distance, beautiful and haunting. The moment his feet touched the ground, the reality of her final days loomed over him. Outside the terminal, Saida was waiting. Her face looked drained, her eyes swollen from crying. She didn't speak right away, she simply walked forward and hugged him tightly, as if holding on to the last familiar piece of her old life. After a long moment, she pulled back and reached into her bag. Her hands trembled visibly. "She said you would be the one to finish what she started," Saida whispered. "And she told me to give you this, only if she didn't make it back home." She placed a small, worn notebook into his hands. The moment he touched it, Aziz felt something shift inside him, like a door opening to a truth he wasn't ready for. "This is where everything begins," Saida murmured, her voice barely audible. Aziz didn't know yet, but this notebook would unravel secrets powerful enough to change everything he believed about her, And about Uzbekistan itself. Aziz sat with the notebook resting on his knees, afraid to open it too quickly, as though the pages might fall apart under the weight of their secrets. He and Saida had found a quiet corner in a small cafe near their hotel, away from the noise of the streets and the murmurs of mourners passing by. The aroma of fresh Arabic coffee filled the air, but Aziz barely noticed. His entire world had shrunk to the fragile object in his hands. The cover was soft from years of use, the edges frayed. Her handwriting, small, neat, unmistakably hers, peeked out from the first page. His hands trembled when he turned it. The earliest entries were ordinary: dates, appointments, reflections on people she had met. But as he flipped further, the tone shifted. Her sentences grew heavier, more cautious, as though she were writing while watching over her shoulder. Saida watched him silently, twisting a tissue between her fingers. What was she afraid of? Aziz asked under his breath, though he didn't expect an immediate answer. Saida looked down. She didn't tell me everything. She said only that she had discovered something important, something connected to her family history. Something people would prefer to stay buried. Aziz scanned a page where her handwriting suddenly grew fast and uneven. There is someone here who knows too much, and someone who wants to know even more. I cannot trust everyone around me. His pulse quickened. Another line. If anything happens to me, the truth must find its way home. Only Aziz will understand how. He felt his throat tighten. Why him? He wasn't family. He wasn't the closest to her. But she had seen something in him, something he was now terrified he might fail. A waiter passed by, speaking in soft Arabic. The clinking of cups momentarily grounded Aziz, but the weight of the notebook pulled him back into the storm. He turned another page. This one contained a sketch, a rough drawing of an old building with Arabic script above the archway. At the bottom she had written, "Library of the Two Lanterns. Ask for the keeper." Aziz frowned. "Do you know this place?" he asked. Saida shook her head, but she visited many times during her stay. She wouldn't say why. Aziz closed the notebook, exhaling shakily. A decision settled in his bones like iron. "I need to go there," he said. Saida hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "Aziz, before you do, there's something else." She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small envelope. Its seal was unbroken, stamped with a symbol he didn't recognize, two intersecting crescent shapes. "She left this too," Saida whispered. "She said not to open it until you had. Read the notebook." Aziz took the envelope, feeling its unusual weight. Something metallic shifted inside. "Did anyone else know she had these?" he asked, lowering his voice. Saida swallowed hard. "Yes. Someone followed her. She told me, she felt watched for weeks." Aziz felt a chill crawl up his spine, even in the warm Madinah air. He looked around the cafe instinctively, scanning faces, corners, shadows. For the first time since he arrived, he felt the invisible presence she had written about, unseen eyes, silent footsteps. And then he saw him. A man in a dark coat, sitting alone near the entrance, pretending to read a newspaper. But his gaze flicked up too often. Too sharply. Too purposefully. Aziz's heartbeat thundered in his ears. This wasn't just grief. This was danger. Aziz pretended not to notice the man near the entrance, but every instinct in him screamed that they were no longer alone. A cold sweat formed at the back of his neck as he slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket. Saida sensed his tension and followed his gaze, her breath catching sharply when she realized what he was looking at. "That's him," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "He was near the hotel yesterday, and again this morning at the mosque." Aziz forced himself to remain calm. Panic would only draw more attention. He closed the notebook slowly, as if nothing were wrong, and gave Saida a subtle nod. "Get ready to leave," he murmured. They waited another minute, pretending to drink their coffee. The man didn't move, but his eyes flicked toward them with calculated regularity, never long enough to be obvious but too often to be innocent. Aziz stood first, stretching casually as if preparing for a walk. When he stepped away from the table, Saida followed. They moved toward the door with steady steps, but Aziz kept his peripheral vision wide open. The moment they exited the cafe and turned the corner, Saida grabbed his arm. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice shaking. Aziz exhaled slowly. "We go to the library. If she left clues there, that's where we'll find answers. And him." Saida whispered. Aziz looked over his shoulder. The man had stepped outside the cafe now, pretending to look at his phone. We don't lead him straight to the truth, Aziz said firmly. We lose him first. They hurried down a narrow street lined with small shops selling prayer beads and books. The call to prayer echoed gently through the air, blending with the bustle of pilgrims. Aziz quickened his pace, guiding Saida through winding alleys until they reached a crowded courtyard. The foot traffic was thick enough to swallow them, at least temporarily. Aziz pulled out his phone, typing quickly into the map, Library of the Two Lanterns. No results. He tried switching languages. Still nothing. It might not be its official name, he muttered. Maybe it's what locals call it. Saida thought for a moment. She once mentioned a scholar she met near the old district. Someone who helped her find rare manuscripts. Maybe he knows. Do you know where he is? Yes, but it's a long walk. Aziz nodded. Good. A long walk is harder to follow. They started deeper into the old district, the streets growing quieter, the buildings older. Sand-colored walls surrounded them, carved with patterns centuries old. The scent of oud drifted from a nearby shop, mixing with the warm desert breeze. But just as they approached a narrow passageway, Saida froze. Aziz, her voice barely escaped her throat. He turned. The man in the dark coat stood at the far end of the street, closer this time, no longer pretending, no longer hiding behind a newspaper or phone. His posture was stiff, his gaze fixed directly on them. Aziz's pulse spiked, but he didn't turn away. He faced the man squarely, gripping the notebook tightly under his arm. The man took one slow, deliberate step forward. Run, Aziz whispered. Saida didn't question it. She grabbed his hand, and together they sprinted through the labyrinth of old streets, the sound of footsteps behind them growing louder, faster, and far more dangerous than grief should ever be. And as they ran, Aziz realized one terrifying truth. Whatever she had discovered, the people guarding it would rather kill than let it be revealed. They ran until their lungs burned, weaving through alleys so narrow that two people could barely pass. The walls of the old district stretched endlessly, creating a maze of sandstone shadows that seemed designed to confuse outsiders. Aziz's heartbeat roared in his ears, drowning out everything, except the pounding footsteps behind them. Left. Saida gasped, pulling him sharply. They stumbled into a courtyard where a small fountain trickled quietly. For a moment, the world felt paused. No footsteps, no dark coat, no threat breathing down their necks. Just silence and the soft splash of water. Aziz pressed his back against a wall, panting. Did we lose him? Saida shook her head, leaning forward, hands on her knees. He's trained, he knows these streets better than we do. Aziz scanned the courtyard. A group of elderly men sat on a bench under a tree, discussing scripture in soft voices. A young boy chased a stray cat. Everything looked normal. Too normal. He checked his phone, a single bar of signal. Not enough to call anyone for help. Not enough to send their location. The city around them suddenly felt ancient and wild, filled with secrets she had uncovered, secrets that now threatened them too. Where is the scholar? Aziz asked. Saida pointed toward a sloping alley. Up the hill, in a house with green lanterns. She visited him 3 times. Aziz nodded. Let's move. Slowly. Not running, just blending in. They forced themselves to walk at a calm pace, though fear pressed against their ribs. Every shadow felt like a watcher. Every doorway seemed to hold hidden eyes. Aziz kept the notebook close to his chest, feeling as if it pulsed with danger. Halfway up the hill, the peaceful sounds of the city faded. The alley grew narrower, darker. Above them, old wooden balconies creaked in the warm breeze. Saida hesitated. This is where she said she felt followed, she whispered. Aziz swallowed. Then we're in the right place. They turned another corner, and stopped dead. The man in the dark coat stood at the top of the alley, blocking their path entirely. No more pretending. No more distance. His eyes locked onto Aziz with an expression that was neither angry nor desperate, just cold. Professional. A predator doing his job. Saida let out a small cry and stepped backward, but another shadow appeared behind them, a second man, emerging silently from a side passage. They were trapped. Aziz felt the world close in on him. The old city walls suddenly weren't comforting or historic, they were walls, real walls, closing off every escape. The first man lifted a hand, motioning for silence. He stepped forward, speaking in low, accented Uzbek. "Give us the notebook," he said. "And the envelope." Aziz's blood ran cold. They knew. Saida grabbed his sleeve, trembling. "Aziz." Her voice broke. "Don't." The man took another step. She shouldn't have kept searching. She knew the consequences. Don't follow her mistake. Aziz's breath stilled. They hadn't wanted her research. They had wanted her. His fists tightened around the notebook until his knuckles turned white. For a brief second, time stretched. He saw Saida's fear. He saw the men's calm determination. He felt the weight of everything she entrusted to him. He didn't know what the notebook truly contained. He didn't know what the envelope hid. But he knew one thing. If he handed them over, her life, and her death, would be erased. Her truth buried forever. Aziz lifted his chin. "No," he said quietly. The man's expression hardened. In the next heartbeat, everything erupted. Saida screamed as the second man lunged. Aziz dodged instinctively, clutching the notebook and envelope as he sprinted down the alley. A hand grabbed his shoulder. But years of reporting in dangerous regions had taught him more than just writing. He twisted free, shoving the attacker into a wall and racing toward a narrow, descending staircase. Saida stayed close behind him, tears streaming down her face. They ran until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distant hum of the city. Finally, breathless and shaking, they emerged onto a wider street where pilgrims walked peacefully, unaware of the danger weaving through the alleys behind them. Aziz collapsed onto a bench, chest heaving. Saida grabbed his arm. "What now?" Aziz looked down at the notebook. Then at the envelope still sealed in his hand. "We find the scholar," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in it. "And we open the truth she died protecting." But neither of them noticed the third man, far more discreet, far more patient, watching from across the street with a faint smile. He whispered into a small device hidden in his sleeve. "They have the notebook. Phase 2 begins."